One of the ways in which women are led astray is that Muslim men will say to Sikh women that they are treated equally within the Sikh faith. This is far from the truth. In Sikhi, we can see very clearly that women are given elevated status, and this includes having the same rights as men in terms of prayer and service, and within general roles within the religion. Sikh generals such as Mai Bago and leaders of the community such as Mata Sahib Dewadi act as shining examples. It's important to understand what the stance of women is in Islam according to the Quran and the Hadith, especially those exploring the Islamic faith. These ideas won't be shared with prospective Muslims for obvious reasons. In the first case, we can look at an extract from the Hadiths when we see Muhammad setting the tone for how women should be viewed in Islam. In a conversation after prayer with some women, he proclaimed that women are the majority of occupants within the hellfire. When they asked him why, he replied that women curse frequently and are ungrateful for their husbands. In this case, we see a huge generalization saying that women run their mouths too often and are in general disobedient to their husbands. He also justifies these as eligible factors as to what leads people to go to hell. This is very dangerous in the fact that he gives the idea that disobedient women will go to hell. We can see how this could be used to manipulate women in marriages to be submissive to their husbands. We'll look at this in more detail later. When further asked about this, the Prophet said, "Is not the evidence of two women equal to the witness of one man in accordance to Islamic law?" Here we see the view that women are worth half the status of a man due to an unjustified reason for women having a lack of intelligence. He also said that women are deficient due to the fact that they cannot pray or fast during their menstrual cycle according to Islamic law. Here we can see how all of these Islamic notions and laws of women have caused them to be viewed in a derogatory way, which leaves them open to abuse and manipulation to their husbands. This could provide a reason as to why many Muslim men feel they can groom, harass, blackmail, take advantage, and even sexually assault women that they are targeting. We see this as a theme when dealing with grooming cases. Sikh girls are often raped, taken advantage of, and in certain cases, pictures taken of them whilst they've been drugged or drinks have been spiked. This leads to them in a very dangerous situation where they are controlled, and often as a result, they feel they have no other option but to convert. If we look at the Sikh stance on women, we see a very different picture. Gurunanak Dev Ji says that, "So kyo manda atiya jitaja maharaya," and they say that how can you call a woman bad, that same woman from which kings are born? And this idea is throughout Gurbani where women are praised and given recognition from the offset. Gurunanak Dev Ji was a champion for women, and in those times, and still today, were discriminated within the Hindu and Muslim faith. Guruji from the offset clarifies that we should not be looking down on women, rather respecting and praising them. In a different scenario, we hear Muhammad commenting on the fact that the Persians had crowned the daughter of Khosrow as their ruler. He said when he heard of this news that such people as ruled by a lady would never be successful. Again, we see clearly this idea that degrades women. In this case, with the fact that Muhammad implies that women don't have the qualities to lead. This links back to the idea that they are deficient in intelligence. This is very worrying in terms of the status of women portrayed within Islam. In Sikhi, we see the complete opposite. As mentioned with Mai Bago and Mata Sahib Dewadi and countless other prominent women who took up key roles within Sikh history, we find many other examples of men being told they can assert their dominance over women, control them, and even beat them if needed. In the Quran, we find the following quote that defines righteous women as obedient. It also goes on to give permission to men to take action, including beating a woman if a man fears rebellion from them. Only if a woman obeys the man, then they are not allowed to seek any way against them. This explicitly outlines that beating is permissible within the Quran, and it also reinforces the idea that in Islam, women are lower than men. With regarding obedience, the Prophet takes it much further. In the Hadiths, we find Muhammad saying that if a husband calls his wife to bed to have sexual relationship, and she refuses and causes him to sleep in anger, then the angel will curse her till the morning. Also, that if a woman is called to bed and she doesn't respond, then Allah, God, will be displeased with her until the husband is pleased with her. Further, Muhammad mentions again in the Hadiths that a woman must obey the call to satisfy her husband even if she is occupied in the kitchen. Basically, abandon anything they are doing, as satisfying her husband's sexual desires should be the first priority for a wife. This is very, very worrying, and the idea that if they don't, they'll be cursed by the angels and God himself. Generally speaking, what kind of a God would entrap women with such a dangerous situation? If these women ultim to the religious and physical punishment for not submitting to the desires of men according to Islamic ideology. This suggests an explanation as to why grooming gangs feel they can have sex with women and rape whoever they desire, especially if they take the law of the Prophet or Islamic law to be above any human or moral law. In most countries, such behavior towards women would clearly be illegal. In Sikhi, again we see the total opposite. Women are celebrated and praised throughout Gurbani as mentioned above. This includes men and women having equal opportunity to practice their faith and not be submitted to such harsh rules regarding what is expected of them in regards to relationships with men. In Sikhi, we have a teaching given to men by Bhai Gurdashti, a prominent Sikh scholar. He says that Eka Nari Jati Hoye, Nari a man should have one woman as his wife and consider any other woman as his daughter or sister. In this case, there's a clear instruction to men to not look or act towards women in a lustful way, or rather to be loyal to your wife. This includes treating them with love and respect and acting as a partner in every notion of the word. There's no notion of women needing to obey men to get God's blessings and to be prevented from going to hell and prevented from being cursed. Within Islam, there are clear instructions surrounding relationships with women outside of a man's marriage. This includes captive or slave women and unmarried women too. Within the Quran, we see that female captives in the possession of a man are fully permissible for marriage and physical relationships. And it's also stated that women that are possessed by the right hand of a man are also permissible to a Muslim man. This could be taken in various ways. Right hand possessed would literally mean anyone who has been captured. Again, this gives a potential reason as to why so many of the grooming cases against Sikh females are from Muslim men. According to their faith, they're not doing anything wrong. The idea that the Quran endorses slaves and even outlines conditions to marry them is very, very worrying. Also, men are given total control as to who they can marry, whereas there's no option for the women who have been captured or enslaved or possessed by a man's right hand. Here again, we see the notion of women being less than men, and in this case having no say in marriage whatsoever. There's further evidence of this where Mohammed says that a virgin's silence means her consent, meaning that a woman doesn't even need to verbally agree for the man to marry her. What if the woman is too scared to say no, and hence remains silent because she knows that there's no point disagreeing? This reinforces the idea that men are in control and women must obey. We also know that Muhammad himself married Aisha at the age of 6 and had a sexual relationship with her at the age of 9. When she describes herself as playing with dolls, most people would argue a grown man having any type of relationship, not to mention a sexual relationship, is worrying and a serious cause for concern. The majority of Islamic scholars agree that Muhammad's age was at least 50 when this took place. This causes one to think, what was the need and why set the precedent of this to his followers with regards to relationships with young women? Coupled with what we've mentioned before, we appreciate why many people think all of these laws and rules given to men regarding women were created to allow men full control, thus increasing chances of higher birth rates and obedience within the faith. But Hadiths then go on to even permit impregnating slave women. During the battle with Bani al-Mustali, the Muslims captured some females and intended to have sexual relations with them without impregnating them. So they went to Muhammad and asked the Prophet, la coerce interruptus, which is withdrawing the penis before ejaculation. The Prophet said that it is better that you should not do it, for Allah has written whom he is going to create till the day of resurrection. Before we examine the above, it's important to take into account another instance in which the Prophet told one of his followers that he shouldn't marry a woman as she's infertile. He replies by saying, men should marry those who are loving and fertile, for I will be proud of your great numbers before other nations. If reading these two instances together, we can see a clear aim from Muhammad, which was to increase the population of Muslims. Men openly given the freedom to have sex with captives and slaves and impregnate them under the excuse that whatever child is going to be born will be in God's will. Although we don't disagree with the idea, we still have the choice to undertake our own actions. It could be seen as a religious excuse to increase the population and allow men to rape women openly. In the second instance, this point gains more clarity as women who are infertile are deemed unworthy of marriage. This could be very harmful for women in Islam that can't have children. If this is the response from the Prophet, then how would the Islamic community look upon them? In Islam, their warriors and their soldiers are encouraged to enslave and even rape women. However, if we look at the stance from the Sikh faith, we have warriors such as Hari Singh Nalwa and Baba Deep Singh Deep, who are famously known for saving captives and slave girls, especially through the plunders of Ahmad Shah Abdali and Nadir Shah. There's an instance when Baba Deep Singh Deep freed over 300 women, the majority of who were Hindus, and when asked about his mission, someone asked to say, How beautiful were the women that he's helped save and returned home? Upon replying, Baba Deep Singh, he said, I don't know. And the man asked, why don't you know? And he said, even though we freed them, I didn't look at any of their faces. Such was the stature and the virtue of great Sikh warriors like Baba Deep Singh, who, let alone putting a hand on women, and he could have very easily done, didn't even look at their faces. Such is the control and greatness that Sikh warriors look up towards and inspire to be. If we continue looking at the Islamic view on women, we find something very alarming regarding disparity in punishment between men and women. From the Hadiths, we find an instance where a father of Mohammed came to confess about the fact that his son had had an illegal asexual intercourse. The man who had the intercourse was given 100 lashes and was to be exiled for 1 year, whilst the woman was stoned to death once she confessed. This again is very worrying, and we see a clear distinction in punishment for men compared to women, with women seeming as if they've got a worse punishment. In Sikhi, we appreciate all people make mistakes. Within Gurbani, we hear everyone is bound to making mistakes, but only the Guru and God themselves are perfect. Yes, we agree that sexual relationships should not be happening outside of marriage. In Sikhi, we're neither led by example with being of a forgiving nature. And we see that the worst of the worst people who were doing the worst of the worst crimes at the time were not only forgiven, but also transformed as well. Within our history, we see people like Thud and Tug who would kill people under a religious guise, and even Godaraksh, who is a cannibal, were all saved by coming into the sanctuary of the Guru. So summarizing, we've seen that Muhammad and the Quran clearly instruct women to obey their husbands out of fearful punishment in both a religious and a physical sense, even when it comes to submitting to them in a sexual manner. Also, we find the degradation of women according to how Muhammad mentions they are deficient in intelligence and that a woman's voice is worth half of that of a man's. Further, it is clear that slaves and captured women and even young girls are fully permissible to Muslim men, even to the extent of them being allowed to impregnate them and marry them with no consent needed. The idea of being able to do what they wish with any woman that their right hand possesses also raises many worrying questions for women within Islam. So, what does Sikhi say, and what did the Guru say about this? This can be summarized by looking at one of the writings of Guru Gobind Singh Ji, the 10th Guru. And Guruji says, don't even visit the bread of another woman, even within your dreams, and not even by mistake. Here the Gurus have outlined the morality and the high level of stature that every Sikh should strive for, let alone that outside of a marriage, we shouldn't even be thinking about other women, let alone having a physical relationship with them. Finally, to any of my Sikh sisters or women generally that are thinking about converting to Islam, please bear all of this content we've shared with you in mind before making any decision. And remember that within Sikhi, the Gurus have empowered women and given them the equal opportunity to reach and experience God. Please share this video with anyone that might find it useful and helpful, and let's spread the truth about the lies that are being spread about women in Sikhi, and also make people aware of what Islam entails for women. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.